In the world of the Tower of God, people are summoned to climb a tower that promises to fulfill their deepest wishes, whether it be wealth, power, or a love life, something you couldn't relate to. At the top of the tower, everything one could desire awaits, and the winner can even become a god. This story follows Rachel, a girl who wants to see the stars, and Bam, a useless boy who is basically her pet that needs nothing but her. Before vanishing into flowers, Rachel tells Bam that she is climbing the tower, telling him to forget her as she starts glowing and disappears from his grasp. As Bam is left alone, thinking about Rachel, he is suddenly summoned to the tower as well. He opens his eyes to find himself on the ground, greeted by a voice welcoming him. A shadowy figure named Headon appears and introduces himself as the caretaker of the tower. Bam asks about Rachel, but Headon only smirks and tells him the answer lies at the top. Headon asks if Bam will take the test to climb the tower, and a huge cage with a white steel eel appears. Headon explains that he must break the black ball in the middle of the cage while avoiding the eel to pass the test. He warns Bam of the tower's dangers, but Bam, not caring because he's basically useless like yourself, immediately runs towards the cage. Suddenly, a lady knocks the breezy out of Bam in the face and speaks a different language, asking if Bam is a moron. A white-haired man appears, yelling at the lady, Yuri, to wait for him. He takes out a glowing white ball from his bag, which translates their language for Bam. The man explains that the ball is a pocket, a translator and lifeline in the tower. Yuri calls Bam a non-regular, someone not chosen by the tower, and Headon addresses her as the Princess of Jahad. Headon warns Yuri that helping a non-regular could get her executed. Yuri argues that it's unfair for Bam to face the white steel eel, which even scares people from the 20th floor. Which the 20th floor will make more sense later on, but for right now you'll be fine. Evan, the white-haired man, agrees that Bam is weak and will perish. Ignoring everyone, Bam steps forward. Yuri tells him to reconsider, but Headon suggests she lend Bam the Black March, a legendary sword of Jahad. The Black March can be either useless or incredibly powerful, depending on the wielder. Evan tries to stop Yuri, fearing her execution if she hands over the sword. Despite this, Yuri gives Bam the Black March. Bam hesitates but takes it and enters the cage, resulting in the white steel eel to charge at Bam. Yuri wants to help, but Headon stops her, saying Bam will fail if she interferes. The eel swallows Bam, thinking it was all over for him, but moments later, it leaks from its mouth and spits Bam out, injured from inside. Fearless, Bam stabs the black ball. Headon then announces that the test hasn't even started. Bam recalls his past, meeting Rachel for the first time. He continues smashing the black ball as the white steel eel approaches. Evan yells for Bam to ask the Black March for strength. When Bam does, the sword's spirit appears, knocking down the eel. The spirit asks if Bam wants the strength to climb the tower, but Bam says he just wants to see Rachel. The black ball breaks, and Bam ascends to the next floor. Although, Yuri is a bit dumbfounded considering the sword spirit would never work for her, but works for a man. Deciding to follow Bam and get the sword back, Yuri leaves. Headon destroys the white steel eel with a wave of his staff. Bam wakes up in a field, where a gray speaker in the sky addresses the regulars about the second floor's test. There are 400 regulars, and the number will be halved in the allotted time. As Bam crawls, a huge warrior appears and is about to eliminate him when an arrow pierces the warrior. A chain of disposing begins, from the archer to a sniper, then to ogres and cyclopses. A crocodile-headed monster looks for prey and senses something. He sees a lizard girl with a formidable presence, who then notices Bam with the black sword. Bam points his sword at a monster in front of a cyclops when a blue-haired guy with a briefcase appears. The crocodile monster joins the group, and they all gaze at each other with eliminating intent. Back to a flashback with this disgusting girl. Rachel was teaching the useless Bam how to write their names. Bam remembered a moment from the past when Rachel asked what he would do if someone hurt her. He said he would fight them, and Rachel patted him on the head with a smile. This sounds like some edgy high school couple you'll see in the hallways. Suddenly, a gator-like monster confronted Bam, calling him Black Turtle and demanding he surrender. A blue-haired guy put his hand on Bam's shoulder, wondering how much the talking alligator would be worth, mistakenly thinking Rack was Bam's pet. The gator monster, offended, introduced himself as Rack Wraithrazor. He declared his intention to hunt Bam. The blue-haired guy sighed at Rack's motivation to become stronger. Rack attacked the blue-haired guy, but he easily weaved and left to see other regulars climbing the tower. However, he was curious about Bam, who had a legendary sword and shaking hands. He took Bam with him, knocking down Rack. Rack chased them as they hid behind a mild-mannered cyclops. The blue-haired guy introduced himself as Kun. His tone changed when he saw Bam's sword, the Black March, a legendary weapon granted only to princesses. Meanwhile, Yuri was bullying Evan, telling him to take her to the newbie. Bam told Kun the truth about his intentions to join the tower, and Kun started wondering if Bam was someone special. Kun set off in a different direction and Bam followed him. They came across a lizard girl and a katana user guy fighting intensely. While waiting for the count to go down, Kun asked Bam if he had ever got rid anyone. Bam replied that he probably hadn't in his current life because he didn't remember his past. Only Rachel's dumb teachings filled his mind. Kun shook hands with Bam, forming an alliance. He was curious about what made Bam so special that a princess of Jah had handed him her sword. As they talked, Rak appeared and attacked Kun.
What?
Just then, the square speaker announced the end of the test. The second test began suddenly, requiring candidates to find 2 allies. As long as all 3 teammates were touching when the count ended, they would pass. Kun and Bam had no choice but to take Rak. Well, more like fighting for their lives to stay on to him. The lizard girl and the samurai boy introduced themselves as Anak in hats. Rak yelled at Bam to fight him, but Kun told his ugly ass to not make a fuss because if Bam revealed his weapon, everyone would jump him, mentioning that if he helped make Bam stronger, it would be easier for them. Kun took out a chocolate bar, which Rak liked and asked for more. 2 regulars started making a scene, and test administrator Lero appeared, telling them not to fight against the rules. Bam was amazed by Lero, and Kun explained that Lero was a ranker, someone who had climbed to the top of the tower where King Jah had resided. Suddenly, Lero created a huge wave of water, forming a barrier. Any team that passed through without succumbing to the Shinszu's test would continue climbing the tower, everyone else would fail. If one team member failed, the whole team would fail. Kun was worried about Bam, since his powers seem a bit ordinary, but was shocked when Bam wasn't on their side of the wall. The wall didn't push Bam back, but Bam, thinking he failed, attempted to go through the wall, but the ranker tells Bam he has passed. However, the ranker words were, "A monster has been born." Other candidates continued to struggle while Lero asked Bam to make a bet to pass the time. If Bam won, Lero would answer any question Bam asked. If Lero won, Bam would have to answer his question, and both picked Anak. Anak and Hats passed through the wall easily. Lero still asked Bam his question since they tied, since tying with a ranker is quite an achievement. Bam asked about Rachel, describing her, but got disappointed when Lero's answer was that he never heard of her. Bam then asked about Irregulars, and Lero explained they are the ones who don't follow the tower's rules. The tower is divided into 3 sections: the outer tower residential district, the inner tower where they currently were, climbable only by regular, and the middle area connecting the 2. Some are chosen by Headon and granted permission to enter the inner tower. Those who enter without being chosen by Headon are irregular. Suddenly, a useless regular started making a fuss about the test, yelling at Lero. Lero raised Shinszu's level to teach him a lesson and then returned to his place while others continued to struggle. Rak and Kun also entered the Shinszu and passed easily, but Kun's briefcase got stuck for a moment. Before leaving, Lero warned Bam not to get too close to Kun. The third test would begin in a few moments. Kunagro's sister was not chosen as the princess of Jahad, which led to their family's exile and dismantling. Agro remembered his mother's advice to trust only himself. Bam noticed Kun gazing at the ceiling and shook him out of his daydreams. Kun told Bam he was looking at the sky, which shocked Bam since he had never seen it. Rak laughed at Bam for not knowing the most common thing. Bam asked Kun about stars. Kun explained that the sky they saw was a mere imitation created using Shinszu, modeled after a legend. Bam mentioned that Rachel wanted to see stars, which was why she came to the tower, and he wanted to find Rachel. Kun stood up, wondering why Rachel left him and climbed the tower and why she took care of him for so long. The third test was ongoing, with teams entering a secret room one at a time. Everyone heard death cries, and the teams never returned, and Kun wondered what was happening inside. Suddenly, a strange pink-faced guy approached Bam and Kun, trying to give them a hint. Kun tried to shake him off, not wanting to buy into the nonsense. But when the pink-faced guy explained his theory, Kun started thinking about it. The pink-faced guy told them that those who didn't scream for more than 5 minutes passed the test. Bam thanked the pink guy, but Kun warned Bam not to thank him, as he was trying to use them to test his theory. The pink guy started bad-mouthing Kun for being the abandoned and betrayed son of the Kun family. Without a second thought, Kun took out his dagger and pinned the pink guy down. then withdrew his dagger and told him to leave. The next team was Bam, Kun, and Rek. As they entered the room, they were greeted by the test director, Han Yu. There were multiple doors, and to pass, they had to open the correct one with only one chance and a 10-minute time limit. Kun wanted more clues, but Yu had already given all the clues. The test began with Rek stomping the ground while Kun tried to concentrate and organize the information he had. There were 12 doors, and Rek started crawling around while Yu calmly made his coffee. Yu thought someone who used his head had arrived, but the test couldn't be passed just with brains. Kun remembered the pink guy's advice, but his mother's advice stopped him. Suddenly, Maria appeared behind Kun, causing him to panic. Kun realized something just as Rek kicked a door, which turned out to be the correct one. Rek had decided based on his instincts. The condition was to open a door within 5 minutes, with no restrictions on whether it was correct or wrong. They just had to open any door. Rek entered the door while Kun questioned Yu about what the test measured. Yu explained that the test was to make them realize that the world wouldn't wait for them and that they needed companions to open doors without hesitation. Bam and Kun also entered the door, and many teams passed after them, and the pink guy had been sent by Yu himself. Bam tried to ask Kun about his past, but Kun declined, saying it's no reason he needs to know. The next batch of regulars had real monsters, and only 3 passed. The administrator decided to take the first, second, and third tests united. If this test was leaked, Yu and Quant would be executed. So basically Yu needed to trick the 3 who has already passed. Bam went to buy something to drink for Rek but didn't know how to use the vending machines, so Shibisu helped him. Shibisu introduced himself and his team, telling Bam he was lucky and motivating him. Lero appeared behind them, informing them about a bonus test. Participation was voluntary, and a team that won this test would be considered to have passed all tests. Everyone smirked and decided to participate. The game they would be playing was the crown game, which involved stealing a crown from each other with a time limit of 5 minutes. 5 teams would participate at once, and the game consisted of 5 rounds. The person who got the crown had to wear it and sit on a throne until the game ended. If they defended till the end, they passed. 4 teams would be disqualified, and 4 new teams would enter for the second round. The game ended if the person with the crown left the chair. In that case, everyone would lose, and 5 new teams would enter. There was a twist: a single team would also be participating from another ground. Shibisu's team entered first, followed by the second team. Rek couldn't enter since the participation of the first team had ended. Anak destroyed the first team, shocking the other participants with her strength. Suddenly, Bam saw Rachel among the new team. Bam started yelling Rachel's name but was completely ignored like your love life, thinking it couldn't be her. As the announcement for the next challenger was ongoing, Shibisu wanted to sit on the throne, telling Anak to step down and defend the crown. However, Anak couldn't step down or they would lose. Rek wanted to press the buzzer to enter, but Kun stopped him, offering him 10 chocolates as compensation. 2 teams entered the arena next. Hats was fighting 3 opponents at once, switching to 2 swords to get serious. Shibisu somehow managed to hold off the second team with his martial arts skills. He was curious about their third teammate, who had been sleeping since the first test. Shibisu was about to be knocked down when Hats jumped in to save him. Hats asked about their last teammate, who was still sleeping. It had been their sleeping member Loro's idea to join first. Loro knew that in this game, the team sitting on the throne was at a disadvantage until at least the second or third round. As the game progressed, the number of participants increased. No matter how much they fought, other teams would interfere with the team sitting on the throne. In the worst case scenario, the crown could be stolen right under their noses. Loro had planned everything. He wanted his team to take Hats and Shibisu away from the throne and leave the rest to him. Suddenly, Loro opened his eyes and used Shinszu. Loro, a wave controller, made Anak leave the throne while dodging her attacks. Kun was confused, realizing someone who could use Shinszu was hiding among them. Anak, furious, took out her weapon and started attacking Loro, but he dodged effortlessly. Anak's weapon split like an octopus, attacking everyone. Loro was disappointed by Anak Jahad's emotions. The Black March started acting strange, shaking uncontrollably. The Black March unleashed itself, and Anak sensed its presence, stopping her rampage. Loro's teammates, Serena and Ho, took him and went back to the waiting room, getting disqualified. Bam tried to control the Black March when Anak broke into their cell, asking Bam why he had the Black March. Anak wanted Bam to hand it over. The Black March was one of the 13-month series, forged by master craftsman Ashel Edwaru. Anak's weapon was Green April, another from the 13-month series, which she is a useless princess of Jahad. Bam refused to hand over the Black March, explaining that he borrowed it from Yuri and would return it. As Anak was about to attack them, Lero jumped in to stop her. Anak proposed a bet for Green April and Black March. Lero was interested in the proposal. As long as the crown game continued, Lero had no problem with it. Anak told Bam if his team survived until the end of the crown game, she would give Green April to Bam. If he lost, she would take the Black March. Even if Bam didn't play, at the end of the game, she intended to eliminate him and take the Black March by force. So either way, Bam was kinda screwed. He thought for a while when Anak started mocking him. Kun and Rak jumped in to defend Bam and decided to accept the bet. Anak was furious at a girl from the secret team mocking her. She was about to rush when Hat stopped her from causing more trouble, and 4 teams has entered the arena. 3 members from different teams rushed to take the crown, but Kun had already taken it using his wind attack. Kun placed the crown in his bag and called everyone to attack him and get the crown. Everyone started attacking Kun, but he kept absorbing and deflecting attacks using his magical bag. Kun threw the crown on the ground, causing every team to start fighting among themselves. The crown Kun threw was a decoy. He had made Bam sit on the throne and showed the real crown to them. Meanwhile, the hidden team was getting ready to eliminate everyone. Kun fooled everyone by creating a fake crown, and it was smart to let Bam sit on the throne. However, Kun knew they couldn't defend Bam from everyone attacking at once, so he needed to distract the other teams until Bam could secure his place. Kun turned his bag upside down, pouring out countless fake crowns that started fading away in the air. The enemies, furious, decided to eliminate Kun together. They charged towards him, but Kun, calmly sitting on the throne with Bam, wasn't worried. Rak jumped in, wiping out every team with a single attack. The 3rd round ended, and participants were being accepted for the 4th round. The secret team decided not to enter the game this round. Kun was ready to defend the throne while Rak feasted on chocolate bars, asking Kun about his bag. Kun didn't plan to reveal himself but had to show Anak something. The 4th round began with only 3 teams. Rak was eager to take on the other teams, but Kun told him to take a break and lie on the throne because their strongest opponent would come in the final round. One team suggested forming an alliance to take down the current throne holder, but Kun didn't flinch and told Bam to wait and watch. The team started fighting among themselves. Kun had prepared for this from the first test. The team that attacked the other team first was on Kun's side. During the first test, Kun gathered allies inside his bag and helped regulars pass the test. The team with Bam and Rak was unexpected. The 3 guys inside Kun's bag were enough for a team. The test administrator noticed, and Kun took them out during the break after the 3rd test. He explained the situation to them and signaled them when it was time to help. As Rak and Kun waited for the strongest opponent, the 5th round began with Rak knocking down an enemy. A black-haired woman with multiple eyes also knocked down many enemies with her staff before jumping to take on Rak. She was about to knock Bam off the throne when one of the secret team members attacked her. Kun let his guard down, and a swordsman from a different team attacked him. Another calm girl stood beside the throne, telling Bam not to worry since they wouldn't steal the crown. Bam recognized her voice as Rachel's. He called her name, but she didn't respond. Bam was about to stand up when the 3rd member of the secret team, a giant, stood in front of him, stopping him. Rak was confused why the enemies were helping them. Kun could only say that the enemy team helping them wasn't interested in the crown. Kun took down his enemy. Only 30 seconds were left to win the game. Bam kept asking Rachel the same question. The black-haired woman found a breakthrough and jumped over the giant, attacking Rachel, which made Bam stand with Black March. Bam was hit in the head while protecting Rachel. The woman was about to finish Bam when the ground started shaking. A huge wave of energy sprouted from Bam and Rachel. Bam stood up and was about to finish the black-haired woman when the spirit of Black March appeared behind him. The spirit knocked down Bam.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Yuri was still struggling to get on the test floor. Bam was taken to the infirmary, and the game ended without a winner since the crown was destroyed. The regulars were exhausted, so Lero gave them a 3-day break. Lero wanted to discuss something with Hansen Yu. He asked Yu the real reason behind the crown game. Yu told Lero about Quant and his rush to make the test short. Lero thought one of the secret team members had previously met one of his examinees. The rule stated that acquaintances couldn't participate in the same test, as decided by Headon. Yu told Lero that their real goal was to expel those who had thoughts or powers that could harm the tower. Yu asked if any of his current examinees had such eligibility. Lero recalled Bam but didn't say anything. Before leaving, Liro Ro asked you if he had ever seen someone use Shinszu without a contract with an administrator. You denied it but mentioned he had heard of such individuals, like Yuri Mazino, an Irregular. Liro Ro was thinking about his conversation with you and the time when Bam lost control and turned into Shinszu. Bam certainly posed a threat to the tower. Liro Ro remembered that he was falling for a test administrator. Rachel visited Bam while he was sleeping and asked Kun for a favor. Rachel told Kun about Bam and how he tried to stop her when she decided to climb the tower. Kun wanted to hear what Rachel had come for in her request. Rachel wanted Kun not to tell Bam about her. She explained that she didn't take the crown because if they were together, they would become each other's weakness. Rak was worried about Bam but didn't show his concern openly. Anak took Black March to Shibisu because the Black March wouldn't obey or talk to women. When Shibisu tried to touch it, he got an electric shock. The Black March only talks to handsome men. As Anak was leaving, another girl appeared and asked if she knew who the true owner of Black March was. Anak wasn't interested. The girl told Anak that she was the only genius fisherman among the princesses of Jahad in the past 500 years to be granted one of the 13-month series. She warned Anak that if she forgot her place, she would end up dead. Anak attacked the girl when she called her an imposter. Kun decided not to let Rachel near Bam. When Bam woke up wanting to ask about Rachel, Kun dismissed it and told him they weren't disqualified. The next day, all the regulars gathered in a hall to select their positions for the 4th test, which would start after position selection. The fights in the tower are team battles. The positions included fishermen, who fight at close quarters, light bearer, who illuminates the dark tower and distributes information, spear bearer, who fights from a distance, and wave controller, who uses Shinszu to support and direct the battle. Scout, who investigates enemy movements and assists the fishermen. During the position selection, Liro told Kun that Bam's position was wave controller. The training for wave controllers was delayed because their instructor was late. Kun lied to Bam, saying the girl he thought was Rachel wasn't her. Kun bought new clothes for Bam since his old ones were covered in blood. Bam went to Rachel's room but decided not to knock and leave. Kun planned to lie as much as possible to keep Bam away from Rachel until the end of the tower. He manipulated Bam to get stronger so that Rachel would want to climb the tower with him. The trainer instructed them to form contracts on each floor of the tower to use Shinszu. As Bam tried to form the contract, he found himself in front of a huge Godzilla-like monster. The monster warned Bam that the contract would be a shackle for him. Bam got exhausted from forming the contract, and the class was dismissed. After class, Ho introduced himself and Loro to Bam. When Ho returned to his room, he collapsed from exhaustion. Rak was also training and was shocked by the secret team's giant's aim. Hats and Shibisu entered Bam's room to request something. Bam, Hats, Shibisu, Serena, Loro, Kun, and Ho were eating lunch when a girl from the secret team joined them. She introduced herself as Endorsi and sat down. Hats and Shibisu, who were scouts, needed to make 9 friends as part of their test. Hats told Kun they had dissolved their team and cut ties with Anak because she disrespected the warrior code. Kun and Hats got into a heated argument, but Bam stopped them. As they talked to Endorsi about friendship, Anak appeared and revealed that Endorsi was a princess of Jahad. Bam looked at the Black March and Anak told him she wouldn't return it. Bam thought Endorsi and Yuri were siblings, but Kun explained that princesses are selected from capable families. Endorsi was training in the fisherman class. Suddenly, Anak appeared, but Endorsi pushed her back since Anak didn't have the black April in class. Kun looked up information about every regular and found out that Anak was selected as a princess after becoming a ranker. He discovered that the real Anak was dead and the current Anak was her orphan. Endorsi started toying with Anak, knocking out multiple fishermen in her way. Endorsi got serious and knocked down Anak, revealing she knew the lizard girl was Anak's orphan. Endorsi asked why she chose a path of misfortune. Anak revealed that her family was killed by one of the princesses, and she was here for revenge against anyone with the name Jahad. Jahad, the king of the tower and the first to ever climb it, built a vast kingdom. He granted power to certain women, but with a strict rule, they must never have apple and the bees with men or bear children to prevent spreading their inherited power. Anak's orphan began attacking Endorsi using Shinszu, the mystical energy of the tower. Anak's mother had broken many rules and faced severe consequences for it. Anak's child, desperate and clinging to life, managed to grab Endorsi's hand and begged her for help. Endorsi, initially caught off guard, grabbed the child's leg and brought her down with her. At the bottom, Endorsi asked Anak's child to tell her more about Anak's mother. The child recalled her mother waving goodbye from a burning house, sending her off to safety. Her father, a cook, made delicious chicken pies. Meanwhile, Ho struggled to hit the target with Shinszu. Bam, making great progress, still lacked control. Loro helped Bam with a trick, which angered Ho, though he kept his jealousy hidden. Kun appeared and took Bam aside to inform him about the fight between Anak and Endorsi. Suddenly, Hats and Shibisu showed up. Shibisu, crying because he hadn't made enough friends, asked Bam for help. Bam wanted to help, but Kun reminded him of the test rules, let competitors fall. Bam didn't want to lose the friends he made, so Kun decided to help, showing his greatness. Endorsi was out of magical points due to her broken leg's medical fees and had no money for food. Hats and Bam arrived in her room with food, but first she needed to befriend Shibisu and Hats. Endorsi had no choice but to accept, as the handsome Hats was offering help. Bam, Shibisu, and Hats then went to Anak's room with chicken pie, winning her over as well. During lunch with the others, Endorsi noticed Rachel and later confronted her in the restroom. Endorsi teased Rachel about Bam's cute face, but Rachel left without answering. Endorsi taunted Rachel, suggesting whatever she sought at the top of the tower must be more precious than Bam. Ho, seeking Bam's true identity, was crying in his room when a letter arrived, making him sweat. Meanwhile, Loro and Yu debated over the joint position test proposed by Quant, who was ready to examine it in Loro's place. Loro had a bad feeling about this test. The joint test was a game of tag involving the 28 regulars who passed. There were 2 teams, with Kun and Bam in different ones. The rules were simple: 2 hit players in the game of tag, one chosen by Yu and the other a fisherman from the team. Each it wore a badge. To win, they had to steal the badge from Yu's chosen it. The winning team would receive 100,000 points, and the badge thief would get 200,000 points. Use it was Quant. Kun, leading his team, set Shibisu as bait since he was a scout. Shibisu worried about Bam, who was weak and might fail. Suddenly, Quant appeared to take the bait, explaining to Kun that he hadn't learned much as a light bearer. Quant knocked down one of their light bearers, but then Anak, Kun, and Shibisu smirked and yelled, "Checkmate." Anak, the team's it, attacked Quant with the green April. However, Quant, a ranker, started dragging Anak along with her green April. Quant was pissed for being taken lightly. As the battle raged, Ho's jealousy grew. He couldn't stand Bam's rapid progress and the attention he received. Ho was determined to uncover Bam's secret, believing it would give him an edge. The letter outside his room hinted at something big, something that made him sweat with anticipation and fear. During the test, the tension was palpable. Kun's strategy hinged on teamwork and cunning. He knew Quant was formidable, but he believed in his team's potential. As Anak engaged Quant, Kun coordinated with the others to outmaneuver the ranker. The stakes were high, failure wasn't an option. Endorsi, despite her earlier conflicts, found herself rooting for her new friends. She realized the value of their camaraderie and the strength it brought. Her thoughts drifted back to Rachel. What was she seeking at the top of the tower? Why did she avoid Bam? These questions gnawed at her, but there was no time to dwell. The battle demanded her full attention. Quant, though powerful, was caught off guard by the Regulars' coordinated effort. Anak's green April was a formidable weapon, and with Kun's strategic mind, they managed to corner him. But Quant wasn't easily defeated. His experience as a ranker gave him an edge, and he quickly adapted to their tactics. In the end, it came down to a final, desperate push. Bam, despite his inexperience, played a crucial role. His determination and unexpected resourcefulness surprised everyone, including himself. With Kun's guidance and the team's support, they managed to snatch the badge from Quant, securing their victory. The celebration was bittersweet. They had won the test, but the challenges ahead were daunting. Quant's anger was the reason Loro thought it would be bad to let him examine the test. Even against weak opponents, Quant uses his full strength to crush them. The amount of Shinszu that Quant can use inside the tag arena is limited, making it likely they won't continue the test. Quant asks them what comes after their failed plan. Plan B is activated, and Shibisu and Anak start running. Quant decides to give them a time advantage, counting to 111 to give them a little edge. One team member tells Endorsi that their team is full of trash. Endorsi stands up and sits beside Bam, who asks her about Michelle Light. The other team watches the test on monitors. Anak uses the elevator, and once she crosses the bridge, they will win. It will take at least 10 minutes for Anak to reach the bridge. Quant has no choice but to take the stairs, so Kun has already ordered his men to watch the stairs. Quant starts climbing the stairs, using Shinszu and his speed to knock down 2 regulars. The other regulars fail to land an attack on him and get knocked down one by one. Anak starts running towards the bridge, and the team defending the stairs has been defeated. There it will reach the top of the stairs soon. Shibisu tells Kun to call Loro, but he is asleep on the first floor. Loro will eventually pass since his stats are high. Loro thinks Tima will lose since Quant has learned which exit Anak will choose and will catch her in no time. Shibisu brags about his strength when Quant appears behind them and knocks him down without mercy. Quant reaches the bridge and runs into Kun, who tells Quant that Anak has just jumped down from the bridge to use the lower exit. Quant laughs at him, saying Anak will die after jumping from such height. Kun smirks, knowing Anak is a princess of Jahad. Kun tries to deceive Quant, but a ranker isn't that stupid. Quant grabs Kun's hand and jumps down. Kun suddenly frees his hand and grabs Green April, with the other end in Anak's hand. Anak starts rising towards the bridge. As Anak reaches the top, she starts running towards the exit. Loro is surprised by Team A's comeback, but Yu interrupts him and tells him to watch. As Anak is about to reach the exit, Quant suddenly appears and snatches the IT badge from her without her noticing. Team A has lost, and Kun blames himself for their loss. Another team member consoles Kun. It turns out Kun and Loro helped Quant reach the top, betraying their team. Kun did this to help Bam, having made a deal with Quant. Team B starts fighting over the leader position, but Endorsi jumps in to stop them and explains her plan. Endorsi wants all fishermen to move together. Only Hats understands the true plan, while the others keep mocking Endorsi as they follow the plan. Ho and Serena are on the ground floor. Serena asks Ho if he is sure he can climb the tower because she has lost hope and can't kill the person she has come to like. Serena's friends were killed by a ranker when they were robbing some ship, which was when Headon summoned her to the tower. Ho, however, has no emotions and wants to climb the tower. Suddenly, Endorsi knocks down one of her own teammates. Endorsi tells a story about a little girl who arrived at the home of a fallen noble family, one of the least significant of the 10 families. In their quest to produce a princess of Jahad, the family adopted talented girls and chose the best among them, feeding them based on their performances. Endorsi's plan was to gather all the fishermen in one place and take out all of Team B's fishermen. Only 4 out of 6 fishermen could pass the position test. Endorsi tells Bam to go where Rachel is while 2 regulars try to sneak attack her. Hats orders the spear bearers to attack the ranker from the shadows, but the ranker is too fast and knocks the sword from Hats' hand. Bam asks Endorsi why she is doing this. Endorsi replies that they are just a team in this test, but they are competing for positions individually. Endorsi gets furious at Bam's naive view, explaining that one can't get what they want until they do whatever it takes. Suddenly, one of the knockdown regulars gets up and launches a charged attack. Hats struggles against Quant and realizes he has to do something while Quant is playing around. Hats hides in the shadows and attacks from behind, but Quant easily dodges the attack and pins Hats to the wall. Hats grabs Quant's arm with a grip that lets none escape. Hats orders the spear bearers to attack, but they are nowhere to be seen, having been hunted by Quant for being traitors. Bam is knocked down by the ignition attack. Ho takes Rachel hostage, planning to kill her to drive Bam out of the test. Bam stands up, refusing to betray his team, but Endorsi tells him it's not what Rachel wants. Bam walks towards Rachel while Endorsi faces 2 injured regulars. Bam tries to connect with Rachel but fails. Ho holds Rachel when Quant appears behind him, scaring Ho. Bam arrives and is confused to see Ho holding Rachel hostage. Ho tells Bam to fight Quant or he will kill Rachel. Quant freezes Bam's body and tells him how to defeat Ho with the same technique. Quant then leaves to chase the It. Rachel gives Bam an opening but gets stabbed in the back. Bam uses the technique to freeze Ho and takes the bleeding Rachel. The secret team's giant has disappeared from his location. Ho starts crying because his kind was massacred. He then stabs himself. Bam is frustrated when Endorsi appears behind them to capture Quant. Serena slaps Endorsi for being a traitor with no remorse. Endorsi tells Bam that to protect the one she wants to climb the tower with, she just removed some obstacles. She advises Bam to choose his own way to protect his precious one. Endorsi and Quant start fighting, with Bam helping Endorsi using the technique Quant taught. Serena sits by Ho's body, lamenting how unfair the world is. Quant gets serious and snatches Endorsi's badge. Endorsi walks towards Quant, puts her head on his shoulder, and suddenly laughs. The thing Quant stole were Endorsi's red panties, and now Endorsi has Quant's badge. The test is over. Team B wins the test, shocking Team A. Shinszu and Endorsi were talking about Bam and Rachel. Endorsi avoided using Rachel's maiden name since everyone now knew that Rachel was the girl Bam was chasing. Kun stood up and left, knowing from the start that only 2 wave controllers would pass the test. Karen had told Kun not to worry about her but about Ho, whose jealousy would drive him mad. That's why Kun removed Ho from the list. Kun's strategy was perfect all along. He was the one who placed the letter and told Quant to keep an eye on Ho. The door knocked hard, and when Kun opened it, there was a child gator in front of him. Kun mistook him for Rak's child, but it was actually Rak himself, reduced in size by Yu. Rak demanded Kun use his bag to return him to his original size, but Kun's bag couldn't do that. Rak was furious when Kun told him Bam wouldn't advance to the next level. Rak wanted Bam to climb the tower. Suddenly, Bam entered the room and informed them about Rachel's condition. Rachel couldn't walk due to deep wounds, so Bam decided to carry her on his back to climb the tower. Bam asked for his team's help. Kun, seeing himself in Bam, was more than happy to assist. Rak, Bam, and the others placed flowers on Ho's grave, giving him a proper send-off. Bam was walking with Rachel when she started crying, feeling guilty for abandoning him. Rachel told Bam he could abandon her too, but Bam said she was his only friend who came to see him from the other side. Bam and Rachel returned to find Hats, Serena, and Shinszu drunk with wine. Everyone fell asleep except Shibisu and Serena. Serena told Shibisu about her life full of regrets and left with her things, forfeiting the tournament. You confronted Bam's teacher, who was pretending to be Yuga but was actually Ren from the Royal Enforcement Division. And well, since his secret was out, Ren attacked you basically. Ren used his pet to attack you, but you slashed it into pieces without moving. You had no intention of fighting Ren since their goals were the same. Ren was there to recover the Black March and Green April and eliminate Anak Jahad. You decided to leave it at that and left for now. Kun told Loro that the letter given to Ho came from someone in administration who knew Ho and Rachel would be on the same team. Only you knew about that, making Loro more suspicious. The results for the position selection test were announced. Yoru, Kun, and Rak passed the test. One regular opposed the results, and you definitely showed his place. Rachel was also disqualified, but Kun opposed the results and asked you to let Rachel take the tests because his friend wanted that. However, you mocked Kun for making friends and told him it was forbidden for injured people to take the test. Kun placed a bet with you to let him take the administrator's test so he could let Rachel take the test. Kun and Loro were shocked when you told them only an irregular could take the administrator's test. Bam jumped in and revealed he was an irregular, shocking everyone. You took Bam to the test hall for the administrator's test. The others talked about Bam being an irregular. Loro told them they could help Bam pass the test, earning the right to climb the tower by the shortest and quickest route, but would be branded as accomplices of an irregular. Kun decided not to help since Bam was an irregular. Hats and Rak opposed Kun for not helping his friend. Dorsey and Anak realized Kun was provoking others to help Bam. Bam stood before the giant creature he had seen during his contract forging. He was ready to face the challenge, determined to prove himself and protect Rachel. Bam emerged from the room and informed you that the administrator had approved Rachel's participation in the test alongside him. The rest was up to you. The final test began, featuring Bam and Rachel in an underwater hunt. They would become fish hunted by net dolphins, who hunt once a day. The queen dolphin uses Shinszu to catch underwater fish. Bam's group would enter a bubble made of Shinszu, and if the queen dolphin swallowed them and spat them onto dry land, they would pass the test. However, barnacle goblins use giant wet worms to steal fish from the dolphin's net. If Bam's group was eaten by the worms, they would fail. The striped earth pigs, enemies of the barnacle goblins and worms, scared the dolphins. They had to ensure the dolphins could hunt freely and eat Bam's bubble. The final threat was the bull, a ferocious creature that even rankers feared, consuming everything that moved. Kun started his plan by fortifying the land. Hats' group watched the pigs and worms, Rak's group would monitor the worms on the surface, and Shibisu's group would watch out for pigs attacking the dolphins. Laura was suspicious of how you had arranged everything in such a short time. Meanwhile, Yuri and her group were trying to reach the test area. The dolphin entered the water. Hats suddenly informed Kun that Kancho's group had vanished, leaving only blood on the ground. The bull then appeared before Shibisu, holding deed in its mouth, half-eaten. Rachel talked to Bam about their past, reminiscing about the time they were together. The bull was distracted by a dolphin and started walking towards it when Shibisu attacked it with a dagger. The bull chased Shibisu and was about to eat him when Dorsey and Anak appeared to save him. Anak and Dorsey made a bet. If Dorsey defeated the bull in her 5-minute turn, she would get both Black March and Green April. If Anak won, Dorsey would be her servant for life. Rak was getting bored when Hats signaled that the goblins were on the move. Kun instructed Rak to follow his orders. The dolphin's net began forming, but Rachel was scared since they were about to be eaten by a monster. Dorsey knocked down the bull, but it got up again and grabbed her with a tentacle. She quickly freed herself, and the bull started fleeing with Anak and Dorsey chasing it. Ren waited for Anak while feasting on pizza. Neri used her divine pet fish, which used sonar to find an underground path. Kun asked Neri if an anima could control any animal, such as the bull. Neri replied that not at her level, but probably a ranker could. Dorsey was searching for Anak when the bull attacked her. This bull was stronger than before and nearly knocked her down. Ren appeared behind Anak and introduced himself, showing her the necklace she gave her mother. Anak, enraged, pulled out Green April. Kun told Rak not to attack and wait. Anak attacked Ren but was overpowered as he kept pulling out tricks. Suddenly, Ren pierced Anak's body. The goblins were alerted and started attacking Rak, Paracole, and Hats. Ren took Green April and mocked Anak for wasting her mother's death. Suddenly, the bull with Dorsey appeared. Ren told Anak that it was all part of the plan with you from the beginning. Ren handed over Green April to Dorsey to finish off the traitor and enemy of Jahad. Bam's hand suddenly started glowing while Ren enjoyed the scene before him. Dorsey picked up Green April and started walking towards Anak. Shibisu was searching for them when he felt a terrifying presence behind him. It was Yuri. Dorsey offered her hand to Anak, who was healing herself. Dorsey gave Anak Green April and took Black March for herself. They attacked Ren together, landing one of their attacks. Meanwhile, Rak faced the goblins and worms, refusing to run. He leapt between them, fighting fiercely. Ren knocked down Dorsey and Anak and began pressing Anak's wound when Yuri appeared out of nowhere. Seeing her swords on the ground, Yuri formally addressed Ren, who explained he was ordered to retrieve the swords. Yuri told Ren to leave, saying she would retrieve them herself. Loro helped Rak and the others by levitating goblins into the air. Ren remained on the scene while Shibisu assisted Anak. Yuri grew serious and gave Ren a death stare. Ren mocked Yuri and attacked her, but she didn't flinch and effortlessly ended Ren's pet with one finger, pushing Ren far away. Suddenly, striped pigs emerged from the worms' mouths, shocking everyone. The goblins and pigs started fighting each other. This was all part of Kun's plan to collapse the underground path and lead the pigs to the goblins. Loro was sleeping when someone who looked like Kun approached him. The lookalike had hacked the test director's monitors and stopped the streaming. Yuri grew bored of playing with Ren. Yu confronted Evan and the giant with him, offering them coffee and allowing Yuri to run freely in the test. Evan ordered Curtin to get involved and use his black ball to communicate with Yuri, telling her she could kill Ren but must not help Anak's daughter. Yuri ordered Curtin to deal with Ren and stepped back. Ivankel spoke with Kun, asking if he was climbing the tower for Maria, to which Kun replied no. Ivankel tried to provoke Kun to attack him. Before dying, Ren told Yuri it was pointless to look for Bam now since he had sent the bull to kill Rachel and Bam. The bull began attacking the bubble. Yuri, furious, was about to crush the test when Anak stepped in to stop her. Bam struggled against the bull's continuous attacks. Suddenly, Bam's Shinszu glowed as the bull swallowed him. The bull started acting strangely and then exploded into bits. Bam fell back into Rachel's lap. Before leaving, Yuri snatched Green April from Anak, telling her to learn to use it properly first. She handed Shibisu a brooch, instructing him to give it to Bam and tell him to use it on the 77th floor. Suddenly, Evan saw a navigator passing by and was confused. In a shocking twist, Rachel stood up and pushed Bam out of the bubble. I knew her ass was from the streets the minute I laid eyes on her. While Bam was falling into the depths of the ocean, Rachel breathed heavily, thinking back to when Headon gave her a chance. When the doors opened, Rachel thought she was summoned, but Headon denied that the tower had called her. Rachel begged Headon for a chance and Headon decided to have her useless ass take the same test Bam took. Rachel opposed such a cruel test, but Headon put her in her place. He told Rachel to witness the birth of a savior, indicating Bam's arrival. Sensing the ugliness inside Rachel, Headon revealed that she wanted to be the star, the exceptional one. Rachel was desperate to climb the tower at any cost. Headon gave Rachel a special test. If she could end Bam's life, she could climb the tower. Rachel had to kill Bam herself. Headon provided her with a bodyguard, the gatekeeper of hell. Rachel wanted someone else to kill Bam, aligning with Yu's plan to make Bam forfeit the crown. But Rachel couldn't kill Bam, no matter how hard she tried. She was sick of hearing about Bam all the time, feeling that the world revolved around him. Intentionally, Rachel got herself stabbed by Ho, waiting for that moment all along. She decided to give up everything to achieve everything. Rachel's jealousy consumed her, turning her dark and muddy. Bam's words had no effect on her. Bam was becoming the star Rachel dreamed of being. She betrayed Bam because he had what she lacked. When Rak and Kun asked Rachel about Bam, she lied, saying they were attacked by a bull. The navigator later congratulated Rachel in her room for executing the perfect plan. Loro told Kun they didn't find Bam's body in the test area, thinking Bam was eaten by fishes. Everyone passed the test, but at what cost? Rak screamed his guts out while Loro, more furious, confronted Yu. Yu told Loro it was all Rachel's decision. Everyone decided to take Rachel to the top of the tower to honor Bam's memory. Kun planned to change the entire tower while Rachel laughed like a maniac. Loro quit as a test administrator and Quant was fired. Loro planned to climb the tower in search of the truth. Everyone believed Bam was dead, but he was alive, protected by the navigator's Shinszu, and Yu took everyone to climb the tower. Bam opened his eyes and saw the navigator in front of him. He asked what had happened. Still concerned about Rachel, the navigator told Bam that Rachel had pushed him down. The navigator told Bam he could become the savior or the god of the tower since he had the key to knowing everything. The navigator urged Bam to climb the tower to find his answers. Resolute, Bam decided to climb the tower. As Bam started his new journey, he reflected on everything that had happened. Rachel's betrayal stung, but it also fueled his determination. He realized that the tower was filled with secrets and challenges that he had to face head on. The betrayal opened his eyes to the harsh realities of the tower and the people within it. Meanwhile, Kun's mind raced with plans to revolutionize the tower. He was determined to bring justice and uncover the truth behind Bam's fall. Rak, driven by anger and sorrow, pledged to support Kun in his mission. The bond between the remaining friends grew stronger as they prepared for the climb ahead. Rachel, on the other hand, reveled in her perceived victory. She believed she had eliminated her greatest threat and could now pursue her pathetic dream of reaching the top. However, the darkness within her continued to grow, clouding her judgment and isolating her from the others. As the group ascended, tensions rose. You observed the dynamics among the regulars, noting the shifting alliances and growing suspicions. He knew that the tower's trials would only get more challenging, testing their resolve and pushing them to their limits. In the shadows, Loro gathered information, determined to expose the truth behind the tower's mysteries. His departure as a test administrator allowed him to move more freely, seeking allies and unraveling the web of deception. Bam, now more aware and resolute, faced the tower's challenges with renewed vigor. Guided by the navigator's words, he sought to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within the tower's depths. His journey was no longer just about survival, it was about understanding his purpose and the true nature of the tower. Each step brought them closer to the answers they sought and the destinies they were meant to fulfill. With Bam setting his sights on his new objective to find the answers he desperately needs, a new chapter begins in this realm, where King Jihad is in charge of everything. In the luxurious Jihadi HQ, the Royal Palace, Princess Yuri arrived to the Royal Palace to meet her sister Repelista, which she did after a needless ostentatious welcome by the butler and her older sister Masheni, who couldn't resist making an ironic thrust at Yuri's responsibility for holding onto the recently recovered swords. As for Repelista, she's the definition of the e-girl of your dreams. Pink hair, snacks, doing God knows what on the net, etc. Despite that, she was smart to figure out that Yuri wants to find where Bam is. After all, Repelista is the greatest in this biz. However, Yuri refuses to believe Bam is dead since he earned her respect. So Repelista managed to strike a deal with Yuri where she'll help her look for Bam, as long as she brings something specific. Now with all of that out of the way, our story resumes not from where Kun and the others have left, but on the 20th floor of the tower instead, where a certain Wangnan did hit a young boy accidentally on his way to take the floor's test. Wangnan was kind enough to lend a hand to Nia to stand up before heading to his test. A test that he'd ultimately fail before he could say a word there, just as everyone else there was eliminated from it because of the flames. Just as he was frustrated at how much of a typical Asian kid he is while taking a shower, some debt collectors led by a guy called Lurker came in. Just like your average Asian parents after figuring out you didn't get an A on a random subject. Wangnan tried to fool the gang members but failed miserably. Just like how he failed by changing his location and phone number multiple times. Instead of finishing off the blonde boy, Lurker gave him one last chance to redeem himself and pass the test, or else his organs would be harvested. Wangnan wasn't able to calm down if it wasn't for the arrival of a certain Nia with some food for them both to eat. After they began to eat, Wangnan figured that Nia was actually going through the same dilemma as him with the 20th floor exam, thus leading them to strengthen their bond of friendship. The next day, Wangnan gathered every bit of courage he had to get to the exam, preparing himself to charge at the first person that came in sight. Except that he was met with Bam, who's on this floor is also known as Vile, taking down all of his opponents already. The blonde team was taken aback that he didn't dare to charge at the veteran, so he opted to attach himself to Vile and charge at the next person who came to the exam room. Vile, however, remained silent despite Wangnan's best efforts to interact with him, which was a setback for the young teen. As for the second part of his plan, well, it didn't work either, and it kept on failing time and again, where newcomers varied from a giant guy to a young toddler who's searching for her parents, just like I'm doing with my dad, to a mother figure that Kang had a crush on from the get-go. Frustrated at this turn of events, Wangnan snapped at the newcomers out of nowhere, so much that he made the young Miseng cry. It was in the middle of this pandemonium that a newcomer called Han arrived. And with that, the room was full and everyone was ready for the exam. Of course, the test didn't begin until people began to think of who should be excluded from this exam. Just as Wangnan began to gain success in getting everyone's support in casting Han aside from the exam, Vile declared that such a method is nothing short of a needless squabble, since he will eliminate them all. Understandably, no one liked Vile's statement. Han in particular was worked up that he threatened Vile, but the poor guy was oblivious to whom he was dealing with, as Vile is notoriously strong. No one in this room could inflict a scratch on him. With Kang getting himself involved in this fight, the test finally began. He realized that needlessly squabbling with Han wouldn't do him any good, so he agreed to work hand in hand with Han to defeat that obscure, arrogant, skinny figure. Despite their best efforts to take him down, Vile was able to overpower them with ease. With 30 seconds left before the end of the test, Wangnan thought that it would be best to play the Patrick Star running away from Sandy style game, where they have to keep their distance from Vile until the test is over. Just as he was about to get caught, however, Wangnan's words about wanting to make it to the top of the tower struck an accord with Vile that got the latter distracted from a booby trap. Even though the trap wasn't able to cause any significant damage to Vile, they were ultimately able to buy everyone there enough time to ensure their success in this part of the test. With that, everyone became safe from Vile's might, for now. As he kept on waiting for the second part of the test to start, Bam couldn't help but remember the good old days he spent with his old crush, as they used to reminisce about the stars and old stories. In reality, he was distant from the people who passed the exam. The latter were contemplating among themselves how many people might pass the exam and how strong they are. Their rail of thought was cut by Miseng, who thought it'd be best to give everyone some chocolate bars. The vast majority of them had appreciated the kid's kindness. Even more surprisingly was Vile, who took the bar without a word, even though he didn't eat it. The second batch of the incoming participants included Nia, much to Wangnan's surprise. There was also the girl that burned everyone in the previous test, Yonyoa, who is being approached by a clingy rich kid called Prince, who got there through his father's connections and mercenaries. Even more shockingly for Wangnan, Lurker was there to participate too, even though the latter couldn't help but make an ironic thrust at Wangnan's weakness. With Wangnan being left apoplectic, the test's host, Love, came in to announce the beginning of the new test, with its rules and regulations, making it clear that only 8 people would be passing. Wangnan was the first to be called. He tried strengthening his resolve and giving it his best shot, only to find himself being bested by a let's see 9 other people for the time being, since he ranked 10th so far and the best participants have yet to step in. As the blonde teen was mourning his luck, he couldn't help but see Prince blackmailing Yoa to gain her freedom if she ranked first. Now I know what you're thinking. Did he enslave the girl after lending her some money of some sort? Well, my dear viewers, you're absolutely right. Sadly, still, that didn't stop Kang from approaching Prince, making it clear that he's annoying other regulars, a statement that was met with spite and arrogance by that rich brat. Trying to back up his statement, Kang punched the Shinszu ball, ranking first in the process. His placement on top of the list didn't last long, however, as one of the mercenaries of the prince, Robdevil, went ahead in a show of force, marking nearly double the score that Kang had made. Now it's Yua's turn to demonstrate her power, but in an impressive feat of clumsiness, she missed the ball, slipped and hit it with her face. Before you or anyone else could laugh, however, she did unexpectedly hit double the score of Robdevil. This might have been a precursor that she could have had a much higher score if she had well focused instead. Before Yua could get to enjoy her achievement, however, Prince surpassed her score by a good sum. Now it's his turn to flex his attitude on her and everyone, as he believes that he's the strongest among all the participants. This is a fatal mistake, as Han stated. Vile is undoubtedly the strongest dog in the yard, and his score has shown that the difference in strength between him and others is like the distance between heaven and earth. Despite this impressive show of force, Love couldn't help but get worked up when he learned that Vile is a part of a terrorist organization called FUG. As worked up as he might be, Love remained calm and asked Vile to pick up 7 participants as part of his own team. Prince was left outraged at this declaration since he believed that it's the top 8 participants that will pass, even though Love made it clear that it's made to determine who's going to rank the first among them. Not us. Thinking fast, Wangnan stood up out of nowhere and began bragging about how much of a team player he is, until he bowed down on the floor to Vile to pick him up. Before Vile could say a word, Han followed suit, and so did Kang and Miseng. Yua took a different approach. Instead of stating her reason for climbing the tower, she tried striking an accord that she was more capable than everyone else. Before this argument could turn into an all-out brawl, however, Vile declared that he wants Love to fail everyone else, since he needs no help from anyone else. Just as Yua tried shaming him for being an arrogant person with a fake FUG tag, she was shocked to learn that he was a legit candidate for the organization. As such, Love suggested that Vile participate in a game, where he could do as he pleases if Vile wins, and abide by the rules if he loses, a game that Vile agreed to. In his hotel room, Wangnan was lying down on his bed, as he was thinking of what had happened today. His rail of thoughts was cut short by Nia's arrival, which was a happy surprise for the teenager. Conversely, Yua found herself in the same room as Vile, much to her horror. However, that didn't stop her from trying to make a gesture of goodwill and go to shower together, assuming that Vile is a girl. In a parallel universe that is absolutely not ours, Vile would get worked up for having his gender assumed, even if he identified as a pineapple. But let's get back to the world of the Tower of God, where it's likely ruled by a jihadi Senator Armstrong after defeating Raiden in Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. A world where Vile decided to ignore Yua and head to the men's shower, leaving the girl in an utter state of disbelief. In the men's changing room, Wangnan was taken aback when Vile brought him the ring of the jihadist's bloodline. He knew he'd be in great trouble if he revealed his identity, but he was even more surprised when Vile gave it back to him without saying much. Once they're back to their rooms, Wangnan and Nia begin to complain about how bored they are, so they decide to play some card games until they get to sleep. And since Wangnan believes that the more the merrier, he invited both Han and Kang to play with him. On their way, however, they found that Miseng was hanging around with an old hag that gave her some candy. Han didn't feel good about what this woman was doing, especially when she mentioned that she wanted to reduce the number of orphans in the world. I'll leave that to your interpretations basically. After managing to get the hag away, the girl burst into tears to summon her mother figure to protect her from the bad-looking Han. It only took an invitation from Wangnan for her and the four-eyed woman to join them on a card game to calm down. Meanwhile, Love informed his superior Augustus that he's not willing to back down against the FUG participant, namely Vile. He went as far as to express that in a sudden change of voice, which reminds me of how spoiled toddlers act when they can't get their burgers, despite Augustus pulling out his face cheeks. As for Vile, well, the guy entered the room to get some sleep, only to find an angry Yoa waiting for him, asking him if she's not going to let him have his way with her. The joke's on her, Vile never had any interest in what deviant thoughts she was having, enraging her even further. After having fun playing card games, Wangnan's group had finally retired to their beds. They couldn't get the chance to get a proper rest, however, because Love declared the beginning of the test. After going through the test's rules and the role of the remote in each room, Love went through to explain the special rules he has for Vile. And with that, the test began in earnest. For starters, Miseng was told by her mother figure to be a good kid and not open the door for anyone to protect the remote before leaving her, just like your wife left you for her boyfriend. While everyone else took their own countermeasures to ensure their victory, Yuri refused to let Vile leave the room to do his own test, just like my mom tried to stop my dad from going to get the milk. Her threats to use violence were as empty as Prince's ego, as both of them stood paralyzed while Vile was taking his leave of the room. Simultaneously, Han and Kang concluded after a brief back and forth that Kang would sit in the room to defend the remote, while Han would go outside to protect Miseng since he sees his daughter in her. As the girl was not responsive after knocking on her door, Han grew even more anxious. He didn't calm down until he heard Miseng respond, despite her not wanting his help. Han was delicate enough to help her as much as he could without stressing her out. Even when he had to deal with the evil old hag, he made sure to keep her quiet to avoid making Miseng cry. It was around the same time that the four-eyed lady arrived at Wangnan's room to end up giving up her own remote to them as a sign of trust, but not to the point to consider Wangnan as an awe-inspiring figure for obvious reasons. When she got back to her room with the blonde, she found that Han had dealt with the threat and was now playing some word game with Miseng to keep her company. As such, the four of them have formed their own team. Despite Wangnan being concerned that Vile is their main threat, Han made it clear that Vile doesn't care much about them for all intents and purposes. Therefore, he concluded that Vile is heading to fight Love head-on. In the corridor, Prince was frustrated at how Vile belittled his skills as he was searching for him when suddenly Lurker arrived to inform him that Robdevil had been eliminated. When he arrived at the scene, Prince assumed that it was Vile's doing. Enraged by this, he entrusted the duty of eliminating Vile to two random people who appeared out of nowhere in his room. Despite lurkers questioning the credibility of these two fellas, Prince didn't care as long as they'll eliminate Vile for him. As for Vile, he had already arrived at where Love was located. Initially, Love tried getting any new information from the FUG member but to no avail. After explaining his rules, the test began in earnest. Love realized that he clearly underestimated Vile, so he began to change his approach to dealing with the FUG candidate. The plan worked, and now Vile is on the back foot against a ranker. Just as Vile was lying next to the wall, Love began to talk about how his parents were taken down by FUG and about how much he wanted to get revenge, just like your average shonen protagonist. Vile, however, didn't care much about joining the organization as long as it would get him to meet the person he needed, be it the effeminate Kun or his hypocritical girlfriend. Elsewhere, Yua began to have a change of heart towards Vile since he had no intentions of unaliving any of the participants in the first place. Suddenly, she heard the door knocking. When she went to check who was there, she found out that it was the chicken that crossed the road. But seriously, it was an enemy that made the poor girl believe that he was an ally, just to take control over her body, literally. As for Prince, he got back to his room to check on where the remote was hidden, instead of checking further on Robdevil. This was a fatal mistake because the whole thing was nothing but a scheme devised by Lurker to win the game. It appears that the latter was willing to bring the game to an even nastier level. How, you might ask? By storming into Nia's room, calling Wangnan on the remote and blackmailing him to pick either the remote or his friend. Nia himself was blackmailed by Lurker to either be obedient or get rid of the old lady who took care of him on the 20th floor for good. Wangnan didn't care about climbing the tower as long as Nia was safe and sound. But Lurker had another say in the matter. His team managed to secure Yua and her room, and as he thought that Nia was now useless, he got rid of him in the most sadistically brutal way imaginable. Wangnan was able to hear the whole thing, and despite his pleading to spare Nia, it all came for naught. Now Wangnan is fueled by a huge load of murderous rage that he decides to go and convince Vile to join his side instead. Vile himself wasn't doing too well. Despite his best effort to get the remote from Love, he failed miserably. Or so he thought, because Wangnan's arrival halted Love from taking the remote by throwing a smoke screen. Despite Love's persistence in getting back the connector, Wangnan insisted on getting Vile to join him. It was around the same time that Lurker got to Prince's room with his mercenaries until suddenly Kang came in to thwart Lurker's plan. Even though the controlled Yua pinned the big guy down for a moment, Vile came in just in time to free Yua and eliminate her abductor for good. With Prince also managing to hide himself in the darkness of his room from Robdevil, Lurker's plans were left in shambles, so he had no choice but to run for his life. It goes without saying that Kang found that this is the best opportunity to demonstrate his demonic powers to the cocky Robdevil. As for the fate of the latter, it can only be guessed at. On the other hand, Wangnan caught up with Lurker and began his revenge in earnest. He didn't care about the circumstances that led Lurker to the sorry state he's in right now, but Wangnan's determination to bring justice to this world made him forgive Lurker in a strange twist of fate. And with that, Vile, Wangnan, Miseng, Goseng, Kang, Han, Yua and Prince have all passed the test. As for the aftermath of this test, Love's resignation from his position was rejected by Augustus, and the participants were allowed to pass to the next floor. Love was also told to get them some fried chicken as an apology. When he was alone, however, Augustus informed his superiors that Wangnan had passed the test, just as FUG wishes. Wangnan and his gang on the other hand couldn't help but celebrate their success late into the night. It was then that Wangnan explained his reasoning for forgiving Lurker, since he hoped to be the one to change the world into a peaceful place where they could laugh together. Hearing this reasoning from Wangnan, Vile agreed to accompany the young teen on his journey. As he sat on his own, however, Vile could not help but reminisce about his best friend Kun. Just as Yua was trying to make sense of what was going on, another friend of Hwarian called Jinsung arrived. Thankfully for the young girl, Vile explained the situation to Jinsung before he could get into a fight with Yua. If only Yua wasn't such a bonehead and insisted on trash-talking Jinsung, which was solved yet again by Vile, who made her fall unconscious. With the higher-ups knowing that Vile's teammates are aware that he's a part of FUG, Jinsung and Hwarian decide to head to Wangnan's apartment and confront them about the situation. Their conversation started well, with brief introductions and talks about their relationship with Vile, which made Wangnan relieved to learn that the FUG members are not bad people as he thought, while Jinsung was also relieved to learn that Vile has some decent people as his allies. In the next table, however, Han was struggling to get Yua to be cured of her wokeism. He pointed out that he knows that she's scared of joining another team if she ever leaves this, as well as her inability to keep her powers in check. What do you think she answered? If you said that she got worked up, assuming that he'll mock her for that, I'm sorry to let you know that you're absolutely right, dear viewers. As such, she was taken aback when she learned that Han believes that she's on the better end of the team, since everyone there is as defective as her, save for Vile of course. As for Vile, he left as soon as Jinsung began to talk, so the latter decided to reach out to him. This was good news for Wangnan because he began to feel increasingly uncomfortable at the former's talkative nature. Once Wangnan was left alone with Hwarian, she informed him that she feels good to see that Vile is finally on track with climbing the tower with a team that can match him, just as FUG higher-ups want. It turned out that FUG are using Vile as their spearhead to get them rid of the jihadi king of Afghanistan, since he's an irregular, unlike everyone else at the Tower of God. Hwarian proceeded to claim that Vile had to become an assassin because if he didn't, FUG higher-ups might have easily annihilated his teammates. Simply put, Bam is being used time and again and manipulated to believe that it's all for the greater good. To make matters worse, Wangnan is unable to do anything to stop FUG from exploiting Vile, for he's, just like FUG, unable to match Vile's strength. Later that night, as Wangnan was trying to strike an accord with Vile to strengthen their bond, Yua arrived. If you think that it was bad enough that she couldn't start a conversation with Vile, she was even worse at taking jokes for what they were, because she got too worked up at Wangnan's attempts to tease Vile and unleashed fire at him and the rest of the team. The next day, the team finally went ahead to take the floor test. It didn't take them much time before the tests area appeared in the middle of the ocean, where everyone was briefed on their objectives and the length of the test. To that end, the team got split in two, the first division of which, composed of Wangnan, Miseng, Gosang and Han, landed on top of the sea god and entered one of its holds. The second division has struggled with their boat, and Yua managed to turn it into a wreck instead of fixing it. Thanks to her recklessness, they were completely helpless when the sea god decided to roll on top of them, sinking the boat. Just as the second division was struggling to get on top of the creature, the first was making progress in figuring out the type of flower required to get from inside the beast, especially when they were taken aback by a tiny creature that carried the flower on its back. Not wanting to waste time, Wangnan and his comrades followed the creature but didn't find much success at first. When the tiny creature entered a small hole, probably dug by a dwarf, Wangnan thought it was best to send Miseng after her. Worried about her after taking a long time to come back, Wangnan and Han decided to find another entrance to it. It was then that Han got the blonde teen to confess what he was hiding. He was horrified to learn that they're not allowed to fail any test, because if they do, one of Vile's old teammates will be eliminated. It was only then that Yua finally climbed the sea god's back and began to look for the rest of her division. If there's anything she didn't shy away from, is expressing how disappointed she is that Vile is still alive. Prince and Kang had already found their way inside the beast and were engaged in battle. When their second opponent arrives, Kang knows that this will not be easy, so he asks Prince to run away instead. Vile was also aware of the enemy's presence, so he followed its aura as fast as he could, with a complaining Karen on his back. Before they could even retreat, the enemy had blocked the exits for Kang and Prince. After a brief back and forth with Mazino, Kang learned that the higher-ups were on this guy's tail, and since they had no more rankers to send after him, they decided to send regulars this time, hoping for better results. Fortunately for them, Mazino gave them the chance to leave, as long as they forget that they've even met him. But when Vile arrived at the scene, he decided to fight Mazino on his own, much to Mazino's excitement. Now it's up to Vile to succeed in this challenge. The flower is above them. If Vile can get to the flower before Mazino catches him, he wins. If Mazino catches Vile, however, the latter of them will be eliminated for good. Vile agreed to the terms, so now they had to wait for the flower to turn around. Kang was smart enough to take the chance and bail out of the fight. But it wasn't out of cowardice. Instead, Kang figured that when the flower turned, both Vile and Mazino would fall into the first division. As such, he asked Prince to send Vile's location for everyone to know. The plan worked, and everyone began to head to where Vile was. Once they got there, the flower finished turning around, and with that, the game began. Everyone began to unleash their might upon Mazino, but the latter was able to make it out unharmed, much to their outrage. Just as Vile and Mazino were about to clash, Miseng came in the crossfire with that creature. Once the fog of the fight has been lifted, it turns out that Vile took a massive hit on his back just so he could protect Miseng. With Mazino having the flower on the back of the creature, he decided to let Wangnan's team get the flower on the ground. As he took his leave, however, Han realized in horror who Mazino was from the tattoos on his back. Once outside, Mazino was welcomed by 4 rankers waiting for him. It didn't take him any effort at all to get rid of 3 of them, as he claimed, "If it's not at least 1,000 on one, I'll look like the one who isn't playing fair, you wimp." He proceeded then to show the child Zygina to the ranker, making it clear that he knows that the rankers were hiding their existence, just for the creature to never reproduce. If it did, the flower would lose its value, just like some powerful people on the 21st floor. Thank you very much. Once he went back to his HQ, he was informed that he received a scratch on his right cheek. It was then that he realized that Vile was not after protecting Miseng. Filled with excitement, he ordered to keep an eye on his new nemesis. As for Vile, despite being badly injured, he's still alive nonetheless. Reminiscing about his first wish from Jinsung being to become stronger, Vile managed to heal himself to an extent. For the next 2 days, Wangnan and his teammates were left worried about Vile's well-being. It was on the balcony that Wangnan was told to leave Vile's side in exchange for a stronger ally. Wangnan, however, refused the demand under the guise that he was going shopping. On their way back, Wangnan brought up the topic to the rest of the team. No one was able to take the news seriously except for Prince, who accused Wangnan of being a coward for abandoning his friend. Prince also made it clear that if there's anyone who should leave and find someone else to climb with, it must be Wangnan himself. Realizing that he has no reason to kick Vile out of the team, and that Han and Kang are determined to have him on their side, Wangnan relented. On the other end of the spectrum, Yua was sitting in her room, crying at how her family name was tarnished for good after the Zygina children scandal. It took her the consoling of Hwarian to get her to act. How did she act, you might ask? Wait for it. As for Miseng and Goseng, they were sitting next to Vile. The former owes her life to him, therefore they're the most concerned about his well-being. They were only distracted by the smell of something burning. If you guys thought that it was Yua's cooking, then you're correct. Unfortunately, it's even worse that she was resolved to become the team's chef. The news was so bad that Miseng began to cry. In an ideal world, Yua would have relented to the demand of an innocent child like Miseng. This isn't the case here though. Wake the freak up samurai, Yua got countless plates to burn, so much that everyone was horrified at the news. That night, Wangnan went to the roof of the building to inform Jinsung of their decision to take Vile with them, to which the old man didn't argue much about it. Once the teen was away, Jinsung gave the signal for a subordinate of his, Karaka, to come out. Before the latter could say a word, Jinsung told him to talk away from the administration's eyes. Once they're isolated, Karaka begins arguing with Jinsung about his refusal to get rid of the Afghani king. This didn't sit well with Jinsung's school of thought, as he believed that the more friends Vile had, the more hostages they could use. As such, he concluded that he knew what he was doing. Despite accepting Jinsung's reasoning, he still refused to trust him completely. Once he got enough distance, Karaka ordered a subordinate of his to hire some regulars to keep an eye on Vile and his team and eliminate them if they did anything suspicious. Back to the team, everyone was relieved to leave Yua in charge of taking care of Vile, while having Kang in charge of the kitchen. As for Wangnan, he had to sit with Hwarian and ask her the best way to reach out to where Vile's friends are. After all, it was Hwarian who informed him of Vile's past and secrets. Even though she was able to figure out who Wangnan actually was, she agreed to help him out with that task. Their beginning will be on the 30th floor, as they will participate in a workshop battle to get new materials and weapons. If they get there in 2 years, Vile will be able to meet with his old comrades. But before we figure out how Wangnan's team will perform for that aim, let's take a brief look at the new technology of this world. The off-brand chat of the Tower of God, Emily. Are you a basement dweller who can't even interact with human beings behind a screen because they can't grasp your non-existent thought process? Emily got you covered. Although it relies heavily on algorithms and learning mistakes based on chats with other users, Emily's popularity is still on the rise. It may make mistakes when answering you, so don't hold it accountable for what it says. On the testing field, Ran and Edin were trying to figure out where the enemy's HQ is located. It was then that Edin pulled his phone out to check on that using Emily, to which they found themselves at a dead end. Kun was aware of that, but he still had much more important matters to attend to, as he had to check on Navik, who was still unable to proceed with the plan, as he didn't know the whereabouts of the enemy base. Just as he began to wonder about Edin, Ran was upset at him, so much so that he wanted to eliminate him on the spot. Edin was lucky, however, as the enemy scout revealed himself as they dug right next to him. Still, Ran didn't like how quick Edin is to get cocky. Before he could go through the tunnel, however, he was taken aback by the arrival of a giant Tine Shinhan from Dragon Ball Z that didn't stop the duo from conducting their plan, as Ran was able to get rid of the giant in Killua Zoldyck style with relative ease. Just as the mole began to brag about it not making any difference, he learned that Edin had managed to reach the enemy base, where he finished the test. It might have been a decisive victory for the team on the outside. But behind doors, Kun was furious at how Edin almost lost them the test because of a bot. After all, they're not a desperate team that needs to rely on AI to win. Realizing his mistake, Edin apologized for his blunder, and to ensure that it'll never happen again, he left his phone with Kun. Just as he left the interrogation room, Edin was met with Rachel, who tried to get him on her side by getting emotional about her quote-unquote inability to walk, before leaving him to get to rest. On the other end of the spectrum, Wangnan's team arrived at where their test will be taking place. The team couldn't help but make an ironic thrust at Miseng, who still relied on Emily for gathering information regarding this test, even though the rest of the team found it to be quite convenient to use. Their conversation came to an abrupt end, however, as everyone sensed the arrival of the enemy team. Their strategy was to scatter in the woods so it would be harder for the enemy to take them all at once, as well as using as many traps to distract them. The latter part worked wonders for Miseng, who managed to get one of her pursuers to lose track of her until he grouped again with his teammates. It was then that Goseng locked them all in a cage, where Yua delivered to them the coup de grace. Despite their spectacular success, the two most dangerous members of the team were still after Wangnan. The blonde team was being hunted by a pyromaniac who kept on calling him Chirpy. Just as he hid inside the bushes, Quitro began to threaten that he'll burn this whole place to the ground if Wangnan did not reveal himself. Just as the hunter turned his back, Wangnan exploited the chance to insert his key into the statue. A good attempt, but too slow to execute as he lost the key to the enemy leader Chang. Quitro didn't like that he was getting betrayed once again after his old chicken Chirpy left him, so he began to garner all of his might upon Wangnan. The latter, however, attempted to exploit how similar he looks to Chirpy so he can get Quitro to relent, just for his plan to come crashing down as Quitro remembered that he did eliminate his pet as he tried to make a roasted chicken out of it. Just as Quitro was about to turn Wangnan into a roasted chicken, however, Vile arrived just in time to prevent that from happening. After a brief struggle, Vile was ultimately successful in turning Quitro into another Yamcha. Realizing how hopeless his situation has been, he was willing to forfeit, unless Vile was willing to fight. His attempts to provoke Vile into a needless fight came for naught in the end, much to his and Wangnan's disappointment. With their victory secured, Wangnan became even more disappointed at the prize, especially since it wasn't the promised quality food he expected. Miseng and Han were of a different mind though, since they did seem to actually enjoy it. Even though Han was impressed at Wangnan's growth in the past few years, he still had an important point that he had to bring. The team have been climbing the tower continuously for the better part of the last 2 years, and it's starting to take a toll on everyone, physically and mentally. Wangnan had that in mind, but he wasn't willing to slow down now while they were this close to getting to the workshop battle on the 30th floor. Hearing this, everyone else relented. Elsewhere, Kun finished checking on Rachel. He still couldn't resist trying Emily out to find an answer to a question he always had in mind. Is Bam still alive? The answer he received was not what he expected. He never expected that his best friend would ever survive that fateful day. It's there that we learn that Emily's processor is a human being, whose unlimited data that's flowing into her brain are beginning to drive her to the brink of insanity. Just as the AI promotes that it wants to be able to love like actual humans. But back to Kun for now, who couldn't get much more infos about Bam's whereabouts. Frustrated at the AI's behavior, Kun dismissed it as a nasty prank in the end, and began to contemplate who else knows about Bam's story. His rail of thought got interrupted by Apple to review the new iPhone that she purchased, especially after managing to track the location of a devil that had defeated Hats in battle before, including his exact whereabouts. Not one to waste time, Kun ordered them to capture their target. Simultaneously, Goseng learned of that devil's presence as well through social media. Everyone around her couldn't help but notice how similar he is to Kang, although Han couldn't help but try to tease Kang for not looking as good as his clone. Kang, however, was shocked when he saw the picture because he knew who Kasano was, identifying him as the devil of the right arm. It was in their hotel room that Kang began to talk about his and Kasano's past, where they were abandoned as children in the middle area. It was there that they were sold as guinea pigs for some workshop, so they would attempt to create new weapons. This definitely reminds me of a certain place. Anyway, Kang has gone through so much trouble that he wasn't even aware that he's alive in the first place, just like all other children in this institute. It was there that he met Kasano. Despite his smaller size, Kasano was full of energy and confidence, unlike Kang who was timid. Nevertheless, Kasano was a great source of encouragement for Kang, so much so that they were like brothers. They also had a teacher that they loved called Mrs. Sophia, who was in charge of their language education. Their admiration for her was due to her humanitarian treatment for them, that went so far as to have her give both of them their names, as Beniamino Kasano and Beniamino Ilmer. Kang admitted that they did love their names so much that they began calling each other by them all night long, until they learned one day of the horrific side of the experiments performed on them by a psychopathic researcher in this facility called Maddox, who was so excited to turn them into the ignition weapons he sacrificed nearly 100,000 unfortunate souls to create. To put it simply, he wanted to turn them into weapons by injecting half a devil's soul into each one of them. The operation was successful, but the trauma that Kasano and Ilmer had changed them forever. They lost all sense of purpose, especially with Sophia gone out of the picture for good. It was many years later that they were released from the institution to enter the Tower of God and struggle there to fulfill their own wish. Thanks to this power he had, Kang faced little difficulty in climbing the tower so far, but he couldn't get rid of that feeling of regret for using the power granted to him after the sacrifice of innocent people. It was only on the 20th floor that Kang got back his sense of purpose when he began to hear rumors about someone that resembles Kasano. Moved by this story, Wangnan declared in full eagerness to accompany Kang with everyone else to meet Kasano. Just as everyone began to talk more about Kang's motives to climb the tower, Yua arrived with her top-tier culinary skills that turned race balls into charcoal. No one was willing to eat it. Even Prince and Miseng had switched from playing video games to pretending to be sleeping when Yua arrived. Just as everyone was against trying out the abomination that Yua made, Vile took a ball and began to eat in earnest. Even though nobody liked the cooking, Vile couldn't help but smile, a reaction that Wangnan got to witness. In fact, Vile had to go out because Kang wanted to see him outside the apartment. The latter followed the group the entire time to learn more about the monster that he summoned to heal him on the 20th floor, and their test against Mazino, but Vile couldn't answer him, nor summon the monster on the spot. This angered Kang so much that he resorted to the use of force, especially since he figured that FUG might be connected to it. Still, Vile couldn't answer that question, but he decided to tell him what he knew about how he got that power. His story began after meeting Shinszu, who promised to grant him the power of God to achieve what he wanted. A power that he gained after bearing witness to a red light in a dark place, a light that granted him that inner demon when he woke up. Vile made it clear that he didn't know much about it, but he felt that he could relate to Kang's story since none of them chose the power granted to them both. When Kang confirmed Vile's story, he apologized and carried on with leaving the team. Vile protested against it, but Kang decided to carry on despite the dangers he may encounter along the way, thanking him and everyone else for being a true family to him. Frustrated at Kang's departure, Vile got back home, unable to tell everyone about what happened. Kang, however, kept on reminiscing about the good old days he spent with Kasano. For now, let's leave Kang for a bit and check further on Kun's team, where everyone prepared themselves to find Kasano. Novik and Hats in particular were butting heads on who to catch Kasano first. But would they be able to reach him first? In his room, Vile sat on his bed, hearing everyone else excited about what to wear to meet with Kang's brother. He couldn't help but be reminded of the now bittersweet memories of himself with his old teammates. Elsewhere, Kang pressed on his long march to meet Kasano until he arrived at the camp where he was spotted. For starters, he couldn't help but enter a lighthouse to get some information about his brother. He was fortunate enough to figure out that the lady that works there knew Kasano, as she spotted him looking for food every now and then in the camp. In her own account, he's likely just another regular who got kicked out of the living area for whatever reason and ended up here. Once he paid her for her help, she proceeded to inform him of his exact location. Apparently, Kasano is located behind a giant hand statue that is often referred to as the Hand of Arlen, and here I was thinking that it is the communist hand with no scythe or hammer in it. Be that as it may, the lady was generous enough to warn him that the place is full of traps left by people who abandon the area, so it would be best if he entered the area with a team. Kang, however, was determined to meet his brother on his own, so much so that he overlooked traps in the area. Fortunately, Kang was strong enough to deal with the initial traps he encountered with ease. It was around the same time that Kun and his team entered the Hand of Arlen area as well, as they discussed its background and began to locate the traps there. Ran wasn't eager to sit idle though, as he began to jump around, destroying every trap that got located, despite Novik and Kun's warnings about them lacking a scout to perform such duty. Kun in particular was furious at Ran's intentional act of destroying his light, as he kept on doing what he was doing. It was a matter of time before both ran into Kang, no pun intended. Assuming that he found Kasano, due to both him and Kang being right-armed devils, he attacked him, refusing even to believe that Kang isn't the guy they're looking for. In these circumstances, Kang had no option but to fight back. Just as Kang managed to drag the fight into a stalemate, Novik came into the scene. But how will his arrival turn the tide of the fight? We'll see that in a moment, once we check briefly on Vile, who was met by Gosang and Miseng. The latter figured that Kang might not come back, so she couldn't help but begin to worry about his safety. Vile, being the good-hearted guy that he actually is, assured her that he'd be back safe and sound, thus she should sleep next to Gosang for the night. In reality, Vile was worried that Kang might meet the same end as Ho from his previous team. Just as he was about to go after Kang, Wangnan and Han arrived at the building's garage. As it turned out, they did figure out that Kang won't be back. Wangnan, in his usual eagerness, made it clear that they should go after him together to get him back, while Han said that it would be best to respect Kang's decision. Vile, however, opposed this. As he didn't want to lose any more teammates, he took it upon himself to bring him back no matter what. After all, they were like a family to Kang. Just as he departed on his own, Wangnan made it clear that they should follow him, and so did Prince and Yewa, who were eavesdropping over the whole conversation. Now with that out of the way, let's get back to Kang, who managed to hear Kasano communicating with him via telepathy. He followed the voice, and so did Ran and Novik follow in his trail. By the time he found himself in a dead end, Kang got attacked once again by Ran. It was only then that Kasano finally revealed himself. Meanwhile, Kang got to finally fix his light box, only to be informed that he got caught in a trap. By the time he learned of that, it was too late. Back at the lighthouse, Vile learned that Kang had indeed come here and asked for intels about Kasano's location, so after paying for her information, Vile headed immediately towards the Hand of Arlen's site. Before he could go though, the lady there made it clear that he needs company, suggesting that she would accompany him to ensure his safety. Unable to accept that his brother got assaulted, Kasano unleashed hell upon Ran, only to find himself engaged in a fight with Novik instead. Kasano, however, was skilled in turning the tide against his opponent and backing Kang up. While Navik was wondering about what was going on, Kun was lying low on the ground as his attacker from earlier emerged from underground, disappointed that he paid that lighthouse girl so much to take down a weak opponent. This was a fatal error because as he approached to take Kun's earrings, Kun caught the freak off guard and began to interrogate him about who he was and who hired him. It turned out that Kun had an armor behind his cloak that protected him from that poisonous shot, and now it was time for him to garner all of his fury upon that assassin. The snake guy couldn't help but cry as he spilled the beans just from a simple injury in his back. While Kun was still wondering about who's that girl with rabbit ears who wants a light bearer like him to be taken down, the upheaval in the hand of Arlen resumed in earnest, as Navik and Rand began to combine their efforts to take down Kasano, just as Vile was carrying that same rabbit girl with him towards the hand of Arlen. The fatal encounter of Kun and Vile is drawing near, but how will it go? Hearing the sound of the heavy clashes, Kun figured that the battle had already begun. He remained confident that all his efforts to ensure that his team grew stronger didn't go in vain, as long as his team successfully defeated Kasano. After all, he spent so much studying since he met with Rand, and now it's time he demonstrates what he learned up until now. Inside the hand of Arlen, Kang was already digging through the rubble where Kasano was lying underneath. The former couldn't help but get infuriated at the fact that his brother got eliminated by Rand and Navik, so he decided to unleash all of his might upon them to avenge Kasano. Navik tried to block Kang's attack, but it proved to be for naught as Kang managed to break through it with relative ease. Still, he managed to get an opening for Rand to attack, just as he threw him defenseless on the ground. Unfortunately for Rand, Kang dodged his attacks. Navik also tried to dodge Kang's attacks, but due to some skill issues that he had, he slipped on the ground as he stood fully exposed to Kang's might, and while Kun was on the verge of identifying the rabbit girl's true identity, the latter's efforts were thwarted by Apple, who had hacked into his own results, while Navik was saved by the intervention of an unexpected person. It turned out that Kasano backstabbed Kang, critically injuring him in the process. Just as Navik and Rand stood confused after what they had just witnessed, Vile and the rabbit girl arrived at the scene. Vile, remembering that Kang considered him and everyone else on the team as his new family, was enraged at the sight of Navik and ran next to the corpse of his comrade. To add insult to injury, Rabbit Girl insisted that they were definitely the ones that had eliminated Kang, while preventing the other two from talking back in the first place. And so did the fight begin, with an orbital attack from Vile. Realizing how tough an opponent Vile is, Navik and Rand tried to combine their efforts to take him down. Little did they know that Rabbit Girl was backing him up too, making a light bearer and a wave controller combo to be a tough nut to crack. Once they identified Rabbit Girl as their primary target, the duo resumed their attacks in earnest. Little did they know, however, that Vile possesses far greater strength than Quatero, as he could control 5 Shinszu balls, and not just 3 as Navik predicted earlier. Although they were beaten, the duo had energy to spare, and so they decided to give it another go, with Vile as their primary target this time. Except that it was Rabbit Girl's turn to back Vile up this time, rendering Navik and Rand's efforts futile. Vile couldn't miss the opportunity to hit them hard as they stood helpless. He still needed to question them more, however, so he didn't deliver the coup de grace upon them. The more he asked them about their purpose for eliminating Kang, the more the duo denied it, insisting that his exterminator is hiding under the rubble. But just as Rabbit Girl insisted that Vile get rid of the duo, Kun arrived at the scene. Bam recognized Kun immediately, even though Kun did not. For the latter, he was more concerned about the safety of his teammates, so he went ahead to check on Navik and Rand. Before he could get any closer to them, however, Rabbit Girl pulled a button from her red cloak, threatening to eliminate everyone in this place if Kun took a step closer. Although that didn't sit well with Vile, the threat of eliminating 2 of his dearest friends from her lightbox was enough to keep him in check. While all of this was going on, Kasano came out of the rubble without a scratch as he approached Kang to carry him on the top of his shoulder. Of course, that didn't go without reminding Vile of the threat he received a moment ago, including the promise that Kang will be saved if he came along. Just as Vile found himself between a rock and a hard place, Rabbit Girl answered Kun that there's some plain old regulars. Vile, however, is different. After all, he's the Slayer candidate of FUG. Navik and Rand, for all intents and purposes, were impressed, albeit they expressed it dully. Rabbit Girl proceeded to point out that a faceless person told her that Vile will be their god. As such, they're supporting him to climb the tower in order to claim wealth and glory. To ensure that they'll get what they want, FUG is on the hunt for every E-rank regular that stands out the most. In this case, Kun is their target. Much to his shock, it turned out that he believed the spies that were sent to him. Those spies were Apple and Michael. Their information about Kasano was nothing but a ploy to lure him into a trap. Being reminded of his threat, Vile decided to put on the facade of a villain. He made it clear that he decided to spare his life out of pity, promising him safety as long as he never sees his face again. This could not be further from the truth, as Vile kept on reminiscing about the good old days he spent with his best friend, concluding deep down that this was the point of no return for them both. Kun, however, figured out that Vile is a terrible actor who desperately tries to cover his attempt to save him. Although Vile was glad to figure out that his bestest friend had never changed, he still denied that he had no reason to save Kun anyway. Rabbit Girl was left speechless by Vile's manners, so much so that Novik attempted to snatch the explosives button from her hand. Thankfully for her, Vile froze Novik in place, buying her time to get the button and take their leave. Although he agreed to come along with them, Vile made it clear that he'd get rid of anyone who would ever dare to threaten the lives of his friends. Rabbit Girl got excited by such an answer, so she decided to carry on with Vile's act and press the button, demolishing the hand of Arlen in the process. As they were getting covered by a stone statue, Vile made sure to tell Kun to run away. That was enough to confirm to Kun that Vile is indeed Bam. Meanwhile, Apple and Michael have successfully gotten rid of Jiatang, while making sure that Edin is all tied up. When the latter began to ask about their true identity, Apple revealed that they were FUG spies that infiltrated the team in order to get rid of Kun. As a matter of fact, Apple went to great lengths to deceive Kun into her trap, to the point where she installed a hacking program on his lighthouse. Realizing that he's useless as an ally for Apple, Edin figured out that he'll be eliminated if he doesn't act fast. Unexpectedly, however, Rachel came into the room, promising the FUG mercenaries that she'll be the guarantor of Edin's usefulness if they let him live. For his part, Edin didn't fall for Rachel's persuasion, as she clearly betrayed Kun at first light. Unfortunately, he wasn't entirely wrong on that, because Rachel betrayed Kun even before that. In fact, she was the one to invite FUG to get rid of Kun. By the time Edin figured that out, it was too late. In the back of her head, Rachel kept on repeating that she had done nothing wrong, thinking she was some kind of Griffith of this show. By the time Prince and Wangnan arrived at the scene, there was nothing but ruins of the hand of Arlen. The news was eventually broadcasted on TV for everyone to learn about the passing of Kun, as well as the note that was left by candidate slayer of FUG Vile Grace. The news did reach out to Rak as well, who couldn't believe it and decided to go ahead and find Kun by himself. Inside the rocky statue, Novik and Ran found themselves being captured by FUG. They learned from Rabbit Girl herself that their main objective is to become the symbol of fear and admiration. Since that was no easy task, they decided to achieve it by creating a story for the birth of a new Slayer. For all intents and purposes, as absurd as her claims were, her reasoning was sound. After all, the effect that such a Slayer had blown up the hand of Arlen and got rid of a prestigious figure like Kun is tremendous, that it could lead to shaking the people's confidence in their king. Ran, however, couldn't stand how delusional Rabbit Girl is when she claimed that FUG members are the best regulars. In order to demonstrate that, he went all in against Kasano, only for the two of them to be stopped by Vile. The latter in particular didn't want to fight Kun's teammates. Instead, he pointed out to Zia the Rabbit Girl's actual name that he will participate in the workshop battle with FUG as long as they let Novik and Ran come along. Zia reluctantly accepted, and so did the duo after being secretly approached by Vile. Ran in particular was convinced by Vile's suggestion that he decided to participate in the workshop battle alongside him. Elsewhere, Kun was recollecting his thoughts about the chain of events that occurred, until he was woken up by the scream of a strong independent woman who can't cook nor control any of her power, to the point that she even burned Kun's bandages. I'm not gonna say that her name is Yewa, I'll let you guys figure that out yourselves though. She was arguing with Wangnan, who was dismayed at such a sight, getting even more worked up when she told him that her fire is inextinguishable. Joke's on her, Kun extinguished it with his bare hand effortlessly, before tying up Yewa and threatening Wangnan with scissors. Kun tried to get information out of the blonde guy, only to learn that Wangnan was trying to learn from him the same things that Kun wanted. It was thanks to Yewa that Kun switched his attention off of Wangnan briefly, as she assumed that he's probably connected to Vile in a way. It was then that Kun called out for everyone, hoping that he could learn more from them about Vile. Much to his surprise, none of them seemed to be connected to FUG in any way, shape, or form, as they were far too weak to be part of the organization. They were following Vile after he left, as they were worried about him. It was at the ruins of the hand of Arlen that they detected a signal from Vile's pocket, but despite their best effort to find him, they came pretty much empty-handed, aside from finding Kun of course. When Wangnan tried to learn anything from Kun about what happened, Kun refused to answer as he proceeded to head back to his team. Learning of this, Wangnan and the others insisted that they tag along, to which Kun agreed. Once they reached his HQ, Han approached Kun to inform him of what he learned about him while he was unconscious, just as the rest were impressed that Kun had a private bunker. When they got inside, Kun began to call out for Edin and the others. Wangnan, on the other hand, was intrigued by some blood next to the door he was in front of. When the door opened up, he was shocked by what he found, that he had to call for Kun instantly. Edin was in a pool of his own blood, while Jiatang had long since he kicked the bucket. To top it off, FUG's name was written on the wall in blood. Amidst this turmoil, Prince snapped out and mentioned that Edin is still alive, to which Wangnan carried him immediately to the hospital. As he did, Kun paid close attention to his comrade, as he came to the horrific conclusion that he did indeed lose his ability to walk. In the hospital, everyone was concerned at Edin's well-being, much to Kun's surprise. His wounds are severe, but he'll live. At that moment, Wangnan was worried about Vile's safety too, so he had to make it clear that there was no way that Vile could be behind this. Thankfully for him, Kun knew who exactly was behind this. He did rumble Rachel's name at first, before excusing himself to get some fresh air. In his solitude, Kun began to further think about what had happened up until now. The more he thought about it, the more he resembled Vile to Bam. That is until Kun began to hallucinate about Bam and his older self.
Yuri!
Being Bam, of course, his trail of thoughts was cut short by the arrival of Hwarian, who came in to confirm his doubts about Bam. Before he could talk about his best friend, however, Kun wasn't buying Hwarian's position as a guide in the tower. His opinion changed instantly just as he learned that she's a member of FUG as well, making her infos to be credible. In fact, Kun was shocked when he learned that Hwarian was the instigator of Bam's involvement in this mess. As for her reasoning behind all this, it was because only an Irregular can take down King Jahad. As such, FUG covered up Bam's death and went with the plot of reincarnating him as an FUG slayer, while her role in this saga is serving as Bam's Ugandan knuckle by showing him Da Wei. Kun was furious at this response that he tried to punch Hwarian, only for her to block it instantly. Although she was his guide, she had no idea about his current location, stating that that was only for the top dogs at FUG to know. In her account, the elders of the organization plan on enforcing their will against Vile by getting him into a team of their own devising. As infuriating as this entire spiel has sounded to Kun, Hwarian had one favor to ask of him. She wants him to enter the workshop battle with Bam's teammates and win, even though that's gonna put him at odds with Wangnan and the others. That wasn't much of a problem though, in comparison to the participation of Jinsung, as he may completely outmatch Bam if he decided to go all in. Kun, however, opposed this since his participation alongside FUG is gonna cause him more trouble than what it already did. Picking up on this, Hwarian reminded him that nothing could be worse than having his entire team already getting wiped out. As such, Kun was left with no better option but to concede to her demand. Before he could do that, however, Wangnan rushed in to inform him that Edin finally woke up. Kun wasn't able to express how guilty he felt for dragging Edin into this mess. On the other hand, Edin asked Kun to take him along to the workshop battle, where he would get his revenge on that creepy cunning deadweight called Rachel. Thank you very much. Especially that she expected him to cry his eyes out and give up on everything. Edin also confessed that he lost all of his teammates before joining ranks with Kun, and that he felt so ashamed for running away while his teammates were getting eliminated. But now that he has lost everything, he realized that his legs were not just for running, and that he could serve a much better purpose now. Moved by such a response, Kun relented to Edin and Hwarian's requests. That concludes the anime recap for now. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below and I'm out.